Next, with some Vision Zero updates. First, with respect to our rapid response team, we did have our first traffic fatality of the year when 84-year-old Lucy Morales was crossing mid-block on Haight between Stanyon and Schrader. She was struck by a car as the driver was turning left out of a business parking lot. We did something this time in response, having our own rapid response team, which are the engineers who go out right as soon as we're made aware of a fatal or possible fatal incident to see if there's anything that we need to do, can do immediately to make the area safer. But they went out with the public health crisis response team and also conducted outreach with the goal to acknowledge the fatality, ensure the city is aware and responsive, and discuss the efforts that Vision Zero has underway to eliminate traffic fatalities citywide on our streets. The teams were on site within 24 hours talking with businesses about how to make their parking and traffic operations safer. The messaging was similar to what we do during the World Day of Remembrance in the fall. And we had a poster with "Our neighbor died here in a traffic collision. One is too many. We can do better." San Francisco posted at that location. As a result of this outreach, there were 300 plus in-person interactions, including in Spanish, connecting people and some with connections to the recent fatality with the Department of Health's Public Health, their crisis response team that had referrals to their 24/7 crisis hotline. So we're trying to obviously prevent these fatalities in the first place. When they do happen, not only see what we can do to prevent them from happening again, but also to use it as a reminder to folks of the importance and everybody's responsibility. I think we got generally a good response and some appreciation from folks knowing that the city is aware of and working on this issue and working hard to get to zero. So along with that, just a summary of education and outreach. In 2018, we had a dozen outreach and education campaigns to raise awareness about traffic safety and Vision Zero, including a partnership with the State Department of Motor Vehicles to play an anti-speeding video at their field offices throughout California. 6 separate ad campaigns, including the District Attorney Senior Pedestrian Safety Campaign that many of you probably saw on buses and bus shelters. The Vision Zero campaigns combined for more than 250 million media impressions, if this number is right, 250 million media impressions. So we're very much trying to use social media and digital channels to reach people. We had more than 15,000 people reached at 52 street team community events throughout the city, and every one of those had Chinese, Spanish, and/or Filipino ambassadors and materials present. So we talk a lot about the engineering and the redesigning the streets, which is critically important, but the outreach and education is important as well. So I wanted to give you that summary of what was accomplished, some of what was accomplished in 2018. Moving on to the BART service changes that will be resulting from their starting service late, starting next Monday as part of a seismic reconstruction project associated with the Transbay Tube. They need longer work windows in order to be able to get that work done. But what that means is that the first hour of service that BART usually provides will be unavailable on train. And so starting February 1st on weekday mornings before 5 a.m., Muni will be running early bird shuttle service between the Transbay Terminal and Daly City BART. And this is parallel with other service that other regional bus agencies are providing to replace the missing first hour of BART service. So our service running for BART will run every 15 minutes, and it will hit all of the BART stops in the city. So it'll hit from Transbay, not every stop in the city. Transbay will essentially serve the downtown stops, and then it'll go to 16th and 24th, Glen Park, Balboa Park, and then Daly City. And of course, those people who are coming from the East Bay to the Transbay Terminal will have also access to service to the downtown stations as well. Fares will be provided with Clipper, so we have an agreement in place with BART to make that all function. And this will happen on weekdays for the duration of the project, which is currently projected to be 3.5 years. So this is not short term. This will be in place for the long term. We'll have ambassadors out at first, or BART will, in conjunction with us, to make sure that riders have the information they need, that the transitions are made as smoothly as possible, and we'll monitor to make sure that any adjustments needed can be made. Moving on to a couple of our own construction projects. The next phase of work on the new platform at UCSF on 3rd Street started last week. It started last Tuesday. It was projected to be a 16-day shutdown initially. The shutdown on 3rd Street itself, it was projected to be 16 days. Because of the rain, we'll probably need to add another day or so, but that work should be done at the end of this week, which will allow a partial reopening of the roadway. The train service on the T line will remain substituted as bus service through March. The construction work, notwithstanding the rain, is going reasonably well. A lot of lessons learned from the previous weekend shutdowns that we incorporated into this, including having some schedule buffer. We've been focusing hard on information to riders. And ultimately, we will have not just the new platform, but a number of new crossovers that will provide flexibility in our service, particularly in service of arena events. And all of this work is expected to be done by late April. So that is progressing well, and hopefully by the end of this week, we'll at least partially reopen 3rd Street. Moving on to Van Ness, progress continues. The work done to date has all been pretty much the underground work. This is replacing 100-year-old water and sewer infrastructure, as well as replacing sidewalks. The water and I know it's billed as the Van Ness BRT project, but we wanted to make sure that we're taking care of all of the infrastructure on the street, really from building front to building front, so that when we're done, that there are new sidewalks, there are new utilities that will be more seismically resistant, and because they were 100 years old, will be more reliable and less subject to failure. But I know that it's been difficult for folks, given the extent of the construction. 2 miles replacing all of this sewer and water and high-pressured water for firefighting. Right now, we have about half of the sewer work done, and we have been able to address some of the issues, or get ahead of some of the issues of the utilities underground that had not been identified by the utility companies that were slowing us down. Having gotten ahead of those, the pace of the work is increasing, and we continue to work with the contractor and bring our own resources onto the project to try to continue to accelerate work. Right now, the schedule is to have service up and running in 2021. We are working our hardest to try to bring that schedule back and recover some of the time that we lost. We are providing support to businesses along the Van Ness corridor through our project outreach team, and working in conjunction with the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. We do have the construction mitigation program in place on the corridor, which brings some of these OEW resources to bear in support of merchants on the corridor. We also, you may recall, have a business advisory committee that is another channel for us to receive input from on behalf of merchants and businesses on the corridor, so that we can address issues as they arise. We do have weekly construction forecasts, which folks can sign up for at sfmta.com/Van Ness, and we are continuing to work to minimize the disruption and accelerate the process as much as possible. A couple other quick things. This board has asked us to explore the seats on the new light rail vehicles. We do have, at your direction, a study underway to determine customer satisfaction with the vehicles overall, and to inform any future modifications and future procurements and possible retrofits of the existing trains. We have customers being surveyed on board in multiple languages, as well as through focus groups. And we're talking to both to regular riders, including seniors and those who identify as people with having mobility-oriented disabilities. And we're already identifying, consistent with what we've heard from some of you and what we've heard from some of the public, some possible changes, such as lowering the seats, such as possible putting in some transverse as opposed to longitudinal seats, and as well as some other ideas. So we will be coming back to this board likely at the next meeting with some proposed changes, things that we would be proposing both for the replacement vehicles that we'll be speaking about later in the meeting, but also with some sense of what might be feasible and make sense in terms of retrofitting the existing vehicles. So just wanted to let you know that we heard you on that, and we'll be coming back to you soon on that. Given that this is the start of the Lunar New Year, I wanted to remind you that on February 23rd, the city will host the annual Chinese New Year parade, one of the largest in the world outside of China. As we do every year, we will participate in the train aboard one of the decorated motorized cable cars. If anybody wants to join on the ride, we'd love to have you. In terms of facilitating the parade itself, there's about 25 Muni lines that we reroute in order to accommodate the parade route, and we do this in very tight coordination with the police department and Public Works so that the street closures and street reopenings are as efficient and effective and minimizing as much inconvenience as possible. And of course, we'll have a full contingent of folks out on the streets, Muni supervisors and traffic control, to both help Muni move and make sure that the rest of the impacted area can move. It is something that we have practice in because it's an annual event, but just know that as everyone's enjoying the parade, there's a lot of MTA resources making that possible. And then I did want to report, and this is kind of late-breaking information on an incident that we had this morning on the main line of the subway. A little bit before 9 a.m., we had a major subway delay that was caused by a switch problem that for a period of time inhibited any movement of trains going through the Castro area. So not a direct impact on the N and J lines, but a direct impact on the KLM, S&T. We had train traffic stopped in both directions for about 25 minutes. Most of the trains were stopped at the platforms, and so people were able to get off. We did have 2 trains that were stuck before Castro Station. The cause of the incident was a mechanical failure on a switch. We had been switching a train back at Castro, and the switch would not go back to its normal straight position that the mainline trains use. This switch was inspected recently by both the rail maintenance and signal crews, but clearly there was something missed in terms of alignment of the switch that we should have been able to address. We did make sure that we were proactively making announcements both in the subway and on the vehicles. I know that's feedback that we've gotten a lot from the staff. And we also deployed staff to nearby stations out to West Portal and to Embarcadero and throughout the system to try to do what we could to provide information and reduce service gaps. We did have bus shuttles running as soon as we could get them working. So we haven't fully evaluated the situation. We had pre-positioned some maintenance resources in the subway to try to be able to respond quicker to issues like these. But it sounds like we had some staffing issues and we had some communication issues that didn't get the folks on the ground fast enough to the switch in order to either manually or permanently fix it. We think that we'll need to change our inspection routines because as I said, we should have been able to identify this issue. There are a number of other kind of issues that as we work through this particular closure, there are other changes that we will make. I do want to note, kind of on the upside, that before today, in the last week or week and a half, we've had very good performance in the subway, and that's despite the fact that we have the T3rd running with bus substitution, which also means we have more trains turning at Embarcadero. We've been very proactive and managing around that construction project, making sure that our best trains were prioritized for service every day, and minimizing other things that have been the source of failures. We added PCOs starting last week to support for increased support at West Portal. This is something I think we heard last week at the board workshop, particularly in the PM peak, to expedite trains exiting the subway where they sometimes get bogged down. And then we've also yesterday added PCOs at the AM peak, so really trying to facilitate movement in and out of West Portal, and I think that's been helpful. And of course, more generally, we'll continue to implement subway improvements, and at the next meeting, we'll start our first of continue monthly updates on Muni service. So generally, the rail service has been good, but today was a significant example where it was not, and our riders certainly, many were very inconvenienced at that, and we're doing everything we can to prevent any such recurrence.
Very good, thank you. Directors, any questions for Director Rubke, please?
I just have a quick question on the LRV configuration. Is there a way for public to proactively reach out and provide input if they're not being intercepted on the trains or otherwise?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have, let me ask our communications director to speak to what channels of input we have for folks to provide feedback.
Hi, Candace Sue, Director of Communications and Marketing. So the focus group work and the survey work that we're doing is intercept-based mainly, but we have been continuing to accept feedback through our other channels, including Twitter and then also through 311, which we've had received actually quite a bit of feedback and are using all of that data together. So we'll accept emails, letters written, or 311 comments, or of course personal feedback. Thank you.
Right, and we've also asked our Citizens Advisory Committee to weigh in on this issue, and they are in the process of doing that. Director Brinkman.
Yes, thank you. Director Riskin, the Muni taking over the early morning BART runs, providing buses for passengers who normally would have been on those early morning BART runs. We're using our Muni buses to do this, correct?
That's correct.
And we can do that because we have enough buses. It's not going to impact our other service to our customers.
Yeah, this is a time window of between 4 and 5 in the morning, so it's at a time where we have the capacity to do it. And BART is compensating us for providing the service because it's to support
Good.
Their construction project.
Good. And it goes on for quite a while, doesn't it? This
3.5 years.
3.5 years. So this is really going to be a lot of use of our buses at a time when we definitely need them, and we'll get them back. Yeah, I just want to make sure that us using our buses to ferry the BART riders, which is great, totally important, and we need to do it. We can do this because we actually do have enough buses in the system now that we can do that.
That's correct. And the compensation that we provide for really any time we provide bus service is not just the kind of hourly operations rate, but it incorporates kind of maintenance costs too. So we try to make sure that we're fully recovered and fully made whole anytime we're using our buses for any non-Muni purpose.
Good. Thank you.
Director Torres.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you, Ed, for all the hard work you and your staff have done on those issues. The seats issue, Randall Street update for me as well. I just want to say thank you.
All right. Thank you. You're welcome.
Anything? Yep.
Thank you. The staff at the West Portal Station, is this something that's envisioned as continuing, or was it more just a one-time thing because of issues?
Well, so it's always hard for us to sustain an enforcement presence because the enforcement demands we have around the city are greater than the people that we have to do them. But we're doing that to see kind of how effective it is. And if the data shows that it's very effective and we don't have other alternatives, we will seek to find ways to sustain it. We have been sustaining PCO resources downtown to help facilitate movements of Muni, particularly in the PM peak, and where it's going to be the only and necessary way to help make the Muni service more reliable. we'll figure out a way to do it.
I will say that I've found it pretty effective or useful.
There's one data point we'll add to the mix.
Okay, we'll go to public comment in a second. I'd like to ask two questions or address two issues. First of all, on the seating configuration, I appreciate your doing this. You said that a lot of our focus is going to be on customer feedback, which is great. That should be the number one data point. But there is another data point that's really important here, and that's the overall efficiency of the train. I think a lot of the design behind the move to the one seat with the two seats in the LRV was the hope that there'd be more people standing, there'd be more standing capacity in the train, and that's greater capacity for the train. And I certainly think that that's the reason behind the New York sort of longitudinal style seats. I personally don't see it. I see people standing two apart, and that's what just happens. And especially when there's only two support poles, that's all that people can really stand safely. So unless you're going to change the support mechanisms, which I'm not really in favor of, I think what we've actually done is reduced seating availability with no capacity increase. And reduced seating availability isn't just a comfort issue. For our older and frailer customers, it's a safety issue because those trains do go fast and they start and stop. And if there is no seat to give to someone who may need it, that creates a problem. So again, as you look at the seating capacity, at the seating issues, I would not look at only customer feedback because customers aren't going to be focused on the efficiency of the vehicle. And if it turns out that the new seating capacity or new seating configuration, really doesn't lead to added capacity, which is the primary transit benefit of the new seating capacity or supposed to be, then I think that really counsels in favor of going back to the original Muni design of 2 and 2, which, as you know, I personally, at least on my anecdotal experience, think is the best. But please consider that other factor. Then as far as the Castro switch issue this morning, you know, Director Torres was very gracious in his comments, and I appreciate that you always take these things on the chin and come to us with transparency and tell us what's going on. But I have to say, as I've said before, this isn't acceptable. And I know the reporting that's going to happen to us will happen at the next meeting. I know we will have some metrics like average time between West Portal and Embarcadero, and I'm hopeful that those will show that the service has improved since we've, you know, at least started asking for this. But the Castro switch issue, as you know, as I break my microphone, is an issue that we've been hearing about for years. And it's not as if you've done nothing about it. You have a rapid response team on the ground there to deal with it. And yet we heard today that maybe it wasn't dealt with properly. And so I asked you, might it make sense at our first report, which you'll have more information on this issue, which was a major service disruption of 25 minutes in rush hour. I mean, this is no light thing. This is a big deal. Would it make sense to have the people from the rapid response team, or at least their supervisor, here to hear from them? Would that help educate the board? I'm not demanding it. It's not my place to demand it. But I'm saying one of the purpose of these reports is to let folks know that we understand what a big deal a 25-minute service disruption in the Castro station is on Tuesday, and that we have the resources there and that they have a plan to deal with this. And I'm not sure my fellow riders feel that way, and so I'm just giving you some ideas that, you know, at the report that we're going to have next meeting, along the lines of what this board and I personally have requested, I think we're going to want some specific answers about this incident, because I've been hearing about Castro Street switch issues for years, and I know you know it's an issue. Okay, thank you, Director Riskin. Public comment on the director's report, Ms. Boomer?